Welcome back. I'm Eddie Pride from Milk and Cookies Total War, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at Conqueror's Blade, a tactical medieval warfare MMO currently in closed beta with a heavy emphasis on siege gameplay and a persistent open world conflict. This is a sponsored video. Going to disclose that right at the start so the FTC will let me be, but as I've said before, I get hundreds of sponsored video requests a year and only ever tackle a handful, because usually it's only one or two that actually line up with the games and content I like doing. This may come completely out of left field for you guys, I'm sure none of you could have guessed, but I love me some siege warfare. Always have, always will. Like a lot of you, I've grown up with stuff like Kingdom of Heaven, Lord of the Rings, Age of Empires 2, the classics. There's something about the brutality and the scale of siege battles, of mounting this desperate defense against overwhelming numbers, that is simply awesome to watch and take part in. When you combine that with units and tactics from many different eras of world history and pit them all together in a huge free-for-all, yeah, I'm gonna be down to play. It's right up my alley. So, Conqueror's Blade is essentially a combination of For Honor, Dynasty Warriors, and Mountain Blade. Not a bad set of games to draw inspiration from. You've got warlords and regiments from a bunch of different eras: Tengo Kuchidai Japan, King Dynasty, Crusading States, the rise of the Janissaries, and even pike and shot warfare. And these all smashed together on some pretty epic looking siege maps to beat the crap out of each other. And ultimately, that's one of the best ways to make a fun game. Just beat the crap out of your enemy. At the start of Conqueror's Blade, you pick a class, whether it be a halberd-wielding European knight, a kenjutsu master with an odachi, an archer, a musketeer, a spearman, or a swordsman, and each of these weapon sets has their own battlefield role and unique abilities. If I had to compare the combat to anything, I'd say it's kind of a blend between Dynasty Warriors and Mountain Blade. Your special attacks function a lot like the Mushu meter from Dynasty Warriors 4. Over the top and very stylized combos with cooldowns that allow you to do some pretty cool stuff like dash in to close the gap between you and an enemy, spinning attacks that are great for clearing out hordes of trash, smoke bombs for the range classes to create some space, huge charges for polearms which bowl over everything in your way, and stealth mode for the assassin characters with their twin blades. It's not realistic, and it's not really meant to be. We're not talking chivalry medieval warfare here, it's an MMO, and those influences are fairly evident the second you step into the open world for the first time. So there are a couple ways to play. The one I've spent the most time with so far is multiplayer siege battle straight from the front end. This lets you queue right into the action. You don't have to worry about the open world at all, really. You've got 15 vs 15 multiplayer PvP with between 500 to 1,000 NPCs per side. Each player controls a regiment of troops. These are customizable and upgradable in a persistent manner, and just like the warlords themselves, come from a bunch of different eras and regions of the world. You've got Naginata warrior monks, Janissaries, Ashigaru musketeers, Templar knights, English longbowmen, Swiss halberdiers, and even winged hussars when you get far enough into the unlock tree. It is an all-star game of some of the most iconic medieval units from history, but at the lower end of the spectrum are the scrubs like woodcutters and Bretonnian peasants who can barely hold a weapon, and their job is to meat shield and die so you can look fancy and cool. Now, controlling these units is where the tactical element comes in, because you have full control over an entire regiment the second you get into battle. You can tell them to attack, to flank, to follow you, or to hold position. And I do not recommend sending your troops to the walls at the outset of a siege, because they will get exploded by siege weaponry in the first couple seconds of combat. Learned that the hard way with my woodcutters in my very first siege battle. Rip in pieces, sweet princes. But it essentially became an all-out brawl for the walls and the courtyards within, and the defenders continue getting pushed back, falling back further and further within the citadel before you finally make your last stand and try to push them back at the final capture point. And as you fight over these choke points, you try to prevent the attackers from capturing the main plaza, which will win them the game. The gameplay itself is really fun and cinematic. Siege towers and cannon fire everywhere, hordes of enemies making pushes through the gates and over the ramparts. It gets hectic and over the top real fast, but it's also got its fair share of jankiness too. Mounted combat is a blast, but when you summon your horse, it just appears out of thin air. You can build siege weapons wherever you want, and this gigantic 5,000-pound cannon will appear after a couple hammer strikes at nothing, and optimization is far from perfect, at least on my system. I was getting about 35 FPS during the big battles, and my system specs are well above the recommended settings, so I'm hoping that's something they can get sorted out as we edge closer to launch, but at the moment, server issues are probably the biggest problem facing this game. They were down for a huge portion of the open beta. It was kind of hard to find any games because there were so many issues with those servers. I think there are just a lot more people playing than the devs expected. They are aware, they are sorting it out, and this was a stress test beta, so not that surprising, but obviously something we should keep an eye out for as we move into May. Now, outside of the regular siege battles, there are PvP duels where you can learn the ins and outs of your chosen weapon set, point capture modes, and that persistent open world, which I think is going to be the game mode that a lot of people gravitate towards. So this is where things get pretty interesting, and a lot more strategy and empire building elements come into play. At the start of the game, you pick a region where you want to settle in, and these cities will be populated by players and NPCs as they queue up for games and roam around the world. You can visit blacksmiths to pimp out your armor, do tutorials, duel other players, recruit troops, and build resource buildings to help kit out your guys. Spanning all the content this game has to offer is this perpetual faction war between guilds, where you engage in diplomacy with players from other houses, organize attacks, trade resources, and try to grab territory from enemy factions. I've not gotten a chance to play that element of the game so far, or at least not much of it. I kind of just zeroed in right on the massive siege battles because that's what really I tend to gravitate towards. But from what I've seen so far, that element, that persistent open world, looks pretty damn cool. It's in the open world where you're going to be marching around with other players. You can attack rebel camps, engage in pursuit battles, which are open field skirmishes that kind of involve multiple armies from each side, and lay siege to enemy castles and take them over. And when you take their castles, that is reflected on the overarching campaign map as well. So that persistent element, I think, is going to get a lot of people excited, and it's being advertised as basically the main focus of the game. Again, I'll probably gravitate more towards the siege battles because I like being able to just jump in and play, but if you're looking for something to scratch that mountain blade itch and you want more of an overarching narrative and campaign to build over time, you can roleplay the hell out of this game, and I imagine it could be pretty fun going forward. I think that's going to be one of the elements that people really love playing with. Now going forward, more factions, visual customization, and units will be rolling in, including war elephants, and it seems like the whole game is building towards a pretty grand campaign map with a lot of flavor and variety. Besides the obvious server and optimization issues that I experienced that really need to get fixed if this game wants to go big, the core gameplay is honestly really fun, and the visuals are bananas. When you've got 1,500 dudes all fighting over a massive castle in real time, you've got siege weapons going off everywhere, artillery coming in, huge armies fighting it out, and you're stuck in and a part of that action, it's pretty sick. And I think a lot of you guys are really going to enjoy it. Conqueror's Blade is launching in May of 2019, according to Steam. Link to the game will be in the description below. If you'd like to see some of my own gameplay, you can check out the archive live stream I did on YouTube last weekend, and let me know what you think of it, what your experience was during the open beta period, if you tried your hand at it, and what you're looking forward to once the game fully comes out. Hope you guys enjoyed this look at Conqueror's Blade, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.